I was treated differently because my parents wanted their second child to be a girl. My parents lost their minds when my older brother refused to move back home after college. I've been away for 2 years, and I kind of expected I'd be back to post one last time in 2024 because my brother went for a 4-year bachelor's degree, much like I currently am. For those who remember my previous posts, I'm the guy whose parents basically got their butts verbally handed to them by the family for bad favoritism towards my older brother. Crap really hit the fan on my 18th birthday because my parents barely put any effort into it and went all out on my brother's 18th in 2020 during the pandemic. They even managed to get a DJ for the party and then presented him with a car. Well, on my 18th, I got no car or even anything close to a similar party, even though my academic standing was better than my brother's. I basically worked too hard for my parents' approval and never got it. When I asked them why my brother got a car and not me, they claimed my brother worked harder for it, which was later confirmed to be untrue when I got a bigger scholarship. My grandma happened to be eavesdropping and laid into my parents. Then she got the rest of the family involved. And for the record, they were planning on getting involved anyway. My grandma just stepped things up right then. After several family members laid into them, my parents, just to try and save face, bought me a car, but treated me like a brat who was getting a new toy when they gave me the keys. It was a late 90s Subaru that I thought was great, but turned out to have a blown head gasket that had barely been holding together with sealer. My parents treated me like I was a brat for wanting equal treatment, and then when the car went bad, their reaction was to apathetically shrug and call it karma, which caused my grandparents to start it all over again with them and caused a family intervention. I got many people messaging me and asking if having a car was really necessary and that I basically forced my parents into it. I forced nothing, and it would have happened anyway if I didn't ask my parents why. And I really did need the car. I had no way of having a job without one. My parents lived 10 miles from the nearest bus stop. I literally had no way of making money before college without a car. And no, I couldn't get rides. No one was available for that on a daily basis. So many people I talked to here tried to dance around my reasoning to insert their own logic, many of whom I felt were projecting their own problems onto me. And then there were the straight-up trolls and jerks. I don't even want to repeat, let alone remember, what they all said to me. But a lot of them kept it up after I got the NTA verdict like they had an axe to grind, and it really didn't help my mental state at the time. As you can imagine, my family laid into my parents all over again in that family intervention, and by the time they were done, they looked like scolded kids sitting there looking at their feet. The Subaru was sold as junk, and my grandparents essentially forced my parents to buy me a better car, a Honda Civic. My uncle went over the car with a fine-tooth comb before they bought it, and that time my parents didn't even treat me like a brat. And yes, I still have the Honda, and yes, it still runs just fine. I've kept up with oil changes and the like. No accidents either. I've been a careful driver. The final thing that broke my parents before I left was finding out that I got a better scholarship than my brother. Any excuses they'd previously had to favor my brother so completely were thrown out the window, and they were forced to give me words of encouragement I knew they didn't mean. In wondering why they disliked me so much, I later found out from my grandma that the reason I was treated differently was because my parents had wanted their second child to be a girl. My grandma ended up admitting even more to me later after I left for college. Before I was born, my parents were so convinced that I'd be a girl that they bought a bunch of girl stuff without even checking my gender through ultrasound. Well, I found out from my grandma about a year ago that my mother had tried to raise me like a girl for the first 6 months of my life. She was putting me in girls' clothes and calling me by a different name. My father enabled it all. I know it's true because my grandma showed me old family photos of me with my brother when I was an infant, and I was wearing pink in all of them. There was even a visible name tag on some of the name my parents wanted for a girl. But once word got out, my parents stopped dressing me as a girl. My grandparents told my mother that trying to raise me as something I wasn't, without even giving me a choice on whether or not I wanted to be that, was wrong. Though my family is rather old school, my grandparents are surprisingly open-minded people, and they put the hammer down on my parents. So the girl treatment stopped, But instead of new clothes, they gave me my brother's hand-me-downs for years until my grandparents noticed that too and did something about it. Finding out all of this, my grandparents kept my childhood from being far worse than it was. And they never told me until this past couple of years. I am incredibly thankful for them. My mother apparently struggled to call me by my real name for 2 years or so. Because my parents didn't get a girl, they refused to connect with me like they did with my brother, the boy they'd actually wanted. When my grandparents heard I wasn't getting anything new like my brother was, they threatened to petition for guardianship of me, and they had evidence of the various things I described too. My parents couldn't stand for anything that could become a public scandal, so they stopped with the hand-me-downs and pretended to love me for a while. But as I got older, it degenerated into indifference, and then maybe into hate. I'm not sure. Hate means to still care in some way, but indifference is the actual opposite of love. I just know my parents couldn't accept that their favorite son wasn't the best at everything compared to their unwanted son. Since I moved out, they've barely interacted with the family. They threw themselves into work, in part because the rest of the family forced them to contribute to my college, like they did my brothers, but also because to them, working was the only thing that gave them a reason to tell everyone to leave them alone. My grandma suspects they've even slept in their cars a few times to avoid coming home. I only saw my parents at Christmas at my uncle's house for the past couple of years, and they barely even spoke to me. Now that I was living my best life away from them, I guess you could say that they'd stopped bothering to act like I was their son. They don't want me anymore after the family humiliation they feel like they'd suffered, even though they know they brought it on themselves. They've become workaholics that do little else. My grandmother told me my bedroom is basically exactly how I left it on the day I moved out. My parents have not even gone inside, but they kept my brother's room clean and ready for the day he'd finally come back home after college. Well, that didn't happen. They flew out to see him for his graduation and had a big celebration with him. I was not invited to go as well. Not that I could afford it, but my grandparents went along and gave me the details. My parents were still convinced my brother would be coming back home. That's when he awkwardly told them he had already secured a job through an internship he'd done the past year, and he'd found an apartment of his own too. My father became furious, and my mother lost her mind, crying and begging him to come home, but he refused. You see, this past 2 years, my brother and I have reconnected a bit. He found my Reddit account and called me. He wasn't angry, just wanted to talk. He admitted to me that our parents put him through a lot as well. Our mother absolutely smothered him, especially when I wasn't around, and our father was also quite strict with his expectations. So the fact that I did better than my brother when our parents had invested everything into him just broke them. Now, they're extra broken because my brother refused to come home with them. The way our parents treated my brother is also the reason we stopped connecting as siblings until this past couple of years. He did bully me at times when we were growing up, but that's because being the favorite went to his head. But it was favoritism with strings attached, and when he realized that, he got counseling after moving out. My brother also has a girlfriend he met while in college. He kept her a secret because he knew our parents wouldn't approve. They didn't when they found out. Bro blew up at them when my mother referred to his girlfriend, whom she hadn't even met, as a slut. Bro's girlfriend is in nursing school and a year from graduation herself. My brother says she's the best. I've never met her, but she sounds wonderful by how he's described her. My grandma told me my mother went so far as to hire a private investigator to find out who my brother's girlfriend was. She was irritated to know that she was squeaky clean and from a good family on the same side politically too. But in her mind, she was the reason my brother wasn't coming back, even though Bro made it clear he decided that before even meeting his girlfriend. My father had basically become stoically silent about it from what I heard, but my mother let it slip to my brother that she'd hired a detective, and my brother gave our parents a piece of his mind. This led to a whole argument about how they gave him everything, and he was ungrateful for not coming back. He called them out, saying that being the favored child is abuse too, because they nearly made him like them. It broke my parents to hear that. My brother told our grandparents, and they staged another family intervention, one I was even involved in through a video call. My parents tried not to pay attention to me, but even bro told them to talk to me. We all told them enough was enough. They have 2 sons, and they needed to start treating us fairly because they let something as idiotic as not being born the gender they wanted ruin their love for me from day one. And pardon my language on this next part. My father hit his breaking point and yelled, "You want us to admit we fucked up?" Well, yeah, we did. What do you want us to fucking do? Time fucking travel. We're paying for part of OP's fucking college too. What more does he fucking want from us? Things ended very poorly in that intervention. My mother cried that she was sorry to me, but even then I still didn't feel her heart was in it because she didn't spend much time apologizing to me at all before moving on to my brother through the phone he was video calling from. She spent a long time crying and apologizing to him until he told her to go back and actually apologize to me like she meant it. That's when my father grabbed the phone and shut it off. Then he just sat down and told everyone to leave. The last thing my grandparents said to my parents was that they were so disappointed in them, and maybe losing both sons showed them they should never have favored one. Right now, my parents are not on speaking terms with the rest of the family. My grandma heard a rumor they may be planning to move, but they have a paid-off country house and great careers. I feel like they'd be fools to move. But since my brother isn't going back, and I'm likely not either, I suppose it's not really an issue. I kinda doubt they'd welcome me in if I came to visit after the crap that went down. I am still thankful to them for helping to pay for my college. My student loans were significantly reduced thanks to them. But as parents, I think we can all agree they just didn't do a good job. TLDR, parents heavily favored my brother to the point of bankrolling his life and getting him a car. Attempted to cast me aside. Family intervened and forced them to be fair and get me a car too, as well as cover some of my college. My parents only got worse after I left home, and I learned even more crazy crap about how they tried to raise me as a girl from infancy. Then my brother graduated college and told our parents he was not coming back. Our parents lost it. Mother hired an investigator, made things worse. Big family intervention that failed, and now my parents are treating the entire family as being dead to them. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible Reddit tales. Share your thoughts or your own experiences in the comments below. I love hearing from you all. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring those amazing stories.